Hi guys. So I've been working on Professor Plucky and I wanted to talk about that. So last time I made a video about this, I mentioned that the little motors I'm using in these plucking mechanisms don't have any positional feedback, which means that if you want the motor to spin all the way around once and then pluck the string and stop, you need some way of figuring out where the string is. And the way that I've been doing that is by monitoring the amount of current that runs through the motor as it spins around. So if you just spin the motor for a while like this, and you plot the amount of current that's running through it, you'll end up with something that looks like this, which I also showed in the previous video. And you can kind of see that every time the plucker plucks the string, there's a spike in the amount of current that's used by the motor. And so you can find the string that way. However, as you can also see, this data is a little bit messy. And as a consequence, that whole thing wasn't working quite as well as I had hoped it would. It was kind of difficult to stop the motor in exactly the right place or in the same place each time. And so in the meantime, one of the things that I did was I rebuilt the whole circuit board that controls the motors, including replacing the microcontroller with a much faster and kind of all-around better microcontroller. And so now if I just run the motor and plot the amount of current that's running through it, this is what you end up with. And you can see this data is just so much cleaner. It's higher resolution and there are really clear spikes every time the plucker plucks the string. And this allows me to much more precisely stop the motor as soon as the string has been plucked. And so related to that, which I also mentioned in my last video, is that the timing of the robot was really abysmal. In fact, I played for you a clip, which I'll play for you again in just a second, of the robot playing some music. And in that clip, all of the notes that it's playing were supposed to be equally spaced in time. But this is what it sounded like. And so it sounds like the robot is just kind of playing at random moments in time rather than playing equally spaced notes. And that's in part because it was so difficult to locate the string accurately. And that's also because all of the motors run at slightly different rates. And since the motor has to go all the way around before it plucks the string, it just takes each plucker takes a different amount of time from receiving a command to pluck a string to actually plucking the string. And so to try to deal with that, I wrote a second calibration algorithm. And so what this one does, the robot will just pluck a string several times in a row and just pause briefly between each pluck. And what it's doing is measuring the amount of time that it actually takes to pluck the string. So then later, when I ask the robot to play a note, it will pause for a short amount of time before it actually starts to move the motor. And how long it waits for depends on how long the robot knows it's going to take to spin the motor all the way around and pluck the string. And so by doing that, you can achieve much better timing. And so here's what the robot sounds like now that I've calibrated it in that way. So clearly the timing here isn't perfect, but I think you can hear that it's much, much better than it was before. So one of the other things that I've been working on is I built a new plucking mechanism here. And this is just supposed to be a boring plucking mechanism. at least in the sense that there's no real visual appeal in its movement. In fact, you usually can't even really see it moving at all because it's kind of obscured by the housing here. And the reason I built this is basically just to serve as an experimental control, because what I want to know is, do people interact differently with these boring plucking mechanisms versus how they interact with these nice plucking mechanisms that move in this kind of visually interesting kinematic way. And so I'll play you a clip here so you can see how these new plucking mechanisms work. And then at the end, you'll also see the nice pluckers doing their thing just because it looks really cool from this angle. Anyway, I think that's all I have to say about this for now, so I guess I'll see you next time. Bye!